All right. Not a podcast is back. We need to really think about a name or
I
something
know.
here.
I just Googled like a podcast or the not pod, and there's 1,000 of them that are called that. So if we do
Eh,
start a podcast, we have to come up with a real name.
Yeah, for any of the audience, you got good ideas, puns, we're open for business and we'll give you credit. But yeah, it's you and I. We're in January. Brad is in Mexico. Wish we were with him drinking tequila, but we're not. We are instead working. And so
I've got
what are
tequila,
you
but
working on? What are you thinking about?
let's think. So very exciting week. Over the holidays, obviously we had HTI-5, which I want to touch on, although it almost feels like old news now. And then this week I had, I was just deep in like client systems documentation, which was really fun. But the things that kind of pull me back to the surface of reality were the announcement about OpenAI for healthcare and ChatGPT for health, and you'll have to tell me what they release and how they're different products. Yeah, I even like got on Reddit just to read what people were saying about it, and then I realized maybe that's a bad idea because you have like all these emotions, but you don't have anywhere to put them in Reddit. It's just a bad idea. So we have a lot to talk about.
I'm always surprised when I go to Reddit and I'm like, man, there's a lot of Luddite behavior here. It was like, on Reddit in particular, we can go down that rabbit hole. It was a lot of negative, extreme negative reactions on the several threads I saw of, why would you ever do this? This is a terrible idea.
You're talking
Not what
about
I expected.
ChatGPT.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, not what I
yeah.
expected.
The things that I have to say about it are almost exclusively I'm tempering expectations. It's not that exciting yet, and here's why. And they don't have to be HIPAA compliant, and here's why. And so I have like maybe detractor things to say about it, but it's going to be an incredible tool. We should get into it, but maybe before we get there, because then I think we'll just go down rabbit holes forever. I would love to hear from you. You've written articles about it. You're already onto almost HTI-6 in your mind, but I want to hear your take on HTI-5. Give me the heavy hitting points. What is the ASCP thinking about writing into regulation, which because this is a proposed rule, so it's not actually regulation yet, and how does that affect the industry? Give me your take.
We can't let that busy December slip by. So HTI-5, the fifth of the heirs of the Cures Act, right? We had the Cures Act in 2016, 2020. They finalized the ONC Cures rule. And then as we got past that era, the certification criteria in Cures rule, information blocking and TEFCA, ASTP, they're like, we got to cook some things up. So under Mickey Tripathi, they did HTI-1, iterating, adding more certification criteria and changing some things in the program, and then proposed HTI-2, which was, let's balloon this thing up to
Yeah,
11. Let's expand it to payers and public health. Let's add tons of criteria and revise tons of criteria. And that got proposed in August of 2024. And, the Democrats did not win that election. With the change of administration, they said, oh, okay, let's push out some of the things. So the HTI-2 final rule was just an information blocking exception, the TEFCA exception. HTI-3 was a protecting care access exception. And then we get to the new admin. All right, what are we going to do? Trump's in power. Uh, as we get through the summer, we actually saw a HTI-4, again, another heir of HTI-2 proposed rule that said, okay, actually the prior auth criteria, the electronic prior auth stuff, that's pretty important to the goals of the CMS because they've already regulated it on the payer side. So we're going to do that piece as part of the IPPS.
CMS 0057 is saying, hey, payers, you have to make APIs available that help us with prior authorization. And then the complement to that on the provider side was HTI-4.
And so that was
Yeah.
in the summer. They just went straight to final. They're like, all right, it was in the HTI-2. You guys commented.
Mm-hmm.
There it is, Da Vinci and NCPDP for medical prior auth and medication prior auth. So then, tick tock, we get to December. There's this rumor of HTI-5. And the rumors were basically, well, this is a deregulatory regime, right? Like Trump's EO, Trump's executive order said deregulate all the things. Doge was deregulating all the things. And so finally that impetus spread
The
to
ASCP.
ASTP. And so
Dr.
that's
King.
HTI-5. Yeah. And
HTI-5.
so they deregulated. It is a deregulatory rule. So it's pulling things out. And so notably there's three prongs. One is deregulating the criteria, get rid of the many criteria because some of them are old.
Which,
Part
just
two,
to be clear, we're going to run back here in history from your historical timeline. The criteria were first created by the ACA, is what created meaningful use, which created the
high tech.
ASTP or ONC high tech, and then created criteria. So now we're going almost back like, 10 years ago, and we're saying, okay, these were important 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, and ripping some of them out, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing is like they're saying actually our goals back then were let's increase adoption of electronic health records because they're on paper. And people
Meaningful
can
use.
say, that was terrible. Well, it accelerated the digitization of that industry. And so like you could say, should it be digital or not? Like you'd probably say yes if you want to do certain things like AI now. But it made EHR powerful, which people resent and don't like. And so many of these criteria are old and have been revised incrementally over time, and that there's been new criteria added. But yeah, it starts back then. And they said, let's rip out anything that's like workflow oriented, right? Like the things that say software vendors, thou shalt have a screen that does X, anything of that variety. They said, let's get rid of it by and large, where it's not, some of the stuff's in statute, it's in the law. And so they have to have criteria that kind of tie back to the law. But anything that wasn't in that category, they ripped out. And then the other prerogative was let's API all the things, which as
Right.
a health API guy, I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
Headless.
And you as an API aficionado, I'm sure are excited about
Yeah.
too.
I mean, 2010, I was in high school. So sorry to date anyone who's listening to this that's older or younger, but and then 2015 I started at Epic. People would say like, oh, ICD-10 is crazy, and I was like, what are you talking about, right? Because it was new just after ACD-9, right? I'm trying to think about like what was important back then. Maybe what I'm saying is like, holy cow, it's crazy how quickly the industry moves, technology moves, and then government has to move as fast. Years ago, we really felt like it was important to say this is what an EHR needs to be able to do. And now it's almost like we don't need to regulate EHRs like the FDA regulates medical devices, although maybe that's not the right topic right now or the right metaphor. We just need to make sure that they're playing nicely together.
People, they're like, oh, why didn't we do interoperability stuff off the bat? And it's like, it wasn't digitized. It was a piece of paper. So like we didn't have the technologies or like had not defined anything, nor have we digitized it in a way that we knew what needed to go back and forth. Like what are the workflows between digital systems? So I think rewriting history, could we have moved faster? Sure, maybe. But there's a push towards API now. And the deregulatory pieces do that by removing the cruft and throwing a bone to EHRs and saying, okay, we're making your lives a little bit easier by getting rid of criteria, by changing the certification program to be less burdensome. And I think EHRs are going to be, all the comments are going to be like super psyched about this, that the insights condition and these other, not the criteria themselves of thou shalt have this feature, but how do you report the measures, the metrics to prove it, or how do you do real world testing? Those
Mm,
things they're deregulating, and
I
that's
know.
a lot of burden. And
I'm
there's
bummed about
reasons,
that.
there's reasons for it, right? You're a big real world
I loved
stan,
it.
right?
I loved searching for a health IT product on the Chapel website, CHPL, and then being like, oh, they are certified, so they must support, CDA exchange. And then looking at the real world testing and being like, oh, they exchanged 3 charts last year. That's noteworthy. Maybe it's telling about how that
How are
system
they meeting
actually
the
exchanged.
criteria? Yeah,
So I
yeah.
missed that. But okay, so we got HTI-5, and since I'm in a big Star Wars mood today, I decided
We
I
have
just need to
we
I
have
just need to
different
be myself.
aesthetics going,
Yeah, I
different
just need to be
aesthetics going
myself
on.
on the podcast, and I'm a big Star Wars fan. So I'm gonna call HTI-5 like the ASTP Strikes Back or something like that. Because
I
it's
love it, and it
yeah.
sets us up for the HTI-6, which we can get to. But the last piece, and so EHRs are undoubtedly psyched. They're going to have comment letters that say, "We support this so much. We support with the ASTP's deregulatory mission. The criteria removal, the changes to the program, and then they're going to have support for this last piece that's not really support because the
Mm-hmm.
information blocking provisions that are in there are not deregulating the burden of information blocking, but deregulating the exceptions removing exceptions, and thus the burden increases. And so they are removing, ASTP saying, these pieces, certified health IT and other actors were hiding behind them. The manner exhausted clause, the manner exception itself in various ways, the fees exception. And so they're changing them, and we don't need to get into the details of it. I wrote a
Well,
pretty long article about.
can I ask an example? Can I give you an anecdote and just hear your take?
Yeah.
So, information blocking is like discouraging the exchange of electronic health information. It's illegal. Basically, if you're an actor, which is like a developer of certified health IT, so a lot of EHRs, or a provider or healthcare information network, then you are an actor who could be blamed for information blocking, discouraging the exchange of information. But of course, it's hard to exchange information because sometimes there's business agreements and then there's technical agreements, blah, blah, blah. And so if it smells like information blocking, it's probably information blocking. But the ASTP said, here are 10 or whatever it was, 9 reasons that you're actually allowed to do information blocking. These are exceptions, right? So if Brendan asks you for his chart via carrier pigeon, then you can be like, oh, we don't support that manner. Can I give you your chart in a CDA document? And there could be an exception that's like, well, you're protecting your patient from something by not responding. So then it's not information blocking. So they're removing some of these exceptions to your point, which means more things are information blocking. What happens if I go to a site and I say, I want to be able to write notes back to your electronic health record? And then that provider's like, yeah, I want you to do that too. You're my business associate and I want you to do that. And then together you go to the electronic health record developer and you say, I want to be able to write notes back to your system. Can you give me an API for that? Like a FHIR API. I'm going to write FHIR document reference resources back to your system. And they say, well, we don't support that. Okay, so that's an appropriate response. It's not a certification criteria to allow notes to be written back to your system, things like that. But we do have an HL7v2 interface that does that. It just takes 6 months to install, and we're going to charge you 20 grand for that install. How is the requester, the person who wants to exchange health information, like how should they respond to get what they want there? Can they just start breaking rules? Can they start suing people? Tell me how that would play out in your head.
It's important to note that the actual like buckets of who's the requester and who's the actor, those are meaningful. And so a lot of times I'll be talking about information blocking and people be like, well, I'm a patient. And are you saying I can write back? I'm like, well, we should think about them in these categories. So you appropriately said, okay, the requester is a business associate. The requester in this case has the provider's permission, and the developer of certified health IT is the actor. That's a very
Right.
common scenario. That's one of the scenarios we see in the court cases, right?
Yep.
Very clearly. I would say it's priority number 2. The 2 top priorities in terms of roles within information blocking are the patient access one. So patient is requester, provider is actor. That's already defined in
Yeah,
HIPAA under the HIPAA right of access, but the ASTP is like, make no mistake, like that is a priority. We're going to double down on this.
for sure.
It's not like
Number one, like most powerful person when it comes to your chart is you. Like you should be able to access it.
yeah. And so they're
Yeah.
doubling down, but like it's not that like intellectually interesting. No offense meant to patients and patient advocates. I'm a patient and I want that right, but it doesn't manifest in kind of novel changes to the equilibrium because the HIPAA right of access was already there, just strengthens
Yeah.
things. Where it does change things is this scenario you're talking about, which is business associate with a provider that is blocked access by a developer of certified health IT. It would be burdensome for any vendor if someone could come up with no exceptions and just say like, give me data in this way,
Yeah.
in a way that they haven't developed, right? Like it could actually be weaponized that
It's impossible.
I could say, oh, I want to take down this vendor and I'm just going to burden them with requests that they're going to spend all their calories fulfilling. And so the exceptions, particularly the manner exception, gives the ability to negotiate and say, actually, the manner you've requested, it's infeasible. There's a lack of security. So for instance, you come and request via carrier pigeon, I would say both those things. It's like, I don't know where I would source a carrier pigeon. You know, where do you go and get them from? There's not a local carrier pigeon store. And so, it's infeasible is one possible path. There's security, right? Like, is it really secure for me to send that data over the carrier pigeon where it feels like the man in the middle attack, with hawks or something could be in
Mm-hmm.
play?
Oh, yeah.
And so
Crazy.
I would say, okay, let's go through this list, this pattern that's defined in a manner exception to to see if there's standards-based ways of exchange or other computable formats that I can offer
Hmm.
you. And that is the pattern that needs to be followed with the manner exception. But there's a delicate dance underpinning that back and forth where other exceptions get referenced. They say, hey, here's a path, but it's actually a revenue share. You would then say, well, that's actually information blocking because of the fee, doesn't meet the fees exception. So suffice to say, like, we can go into the nuances of this one, but everyone's individual situation is really important to map to the contours of this, and then
Which is confusing.
but then approach it as a dialogue with the
Yeah.
EHR vendor, the
Yeah.
certified health IT vendor or other actor, and go through those steps. It's not litigious. It is a collaborative discussion to find a mutual way of
Yeah.
exchange, access, and use of EHI. And if they are truly blocking, then it's a problem. They're going to be in trouble. You and I have both been on calls and helped customers on both sides of this equation work through these negotiations. And it leads to typically good outcomes in terms of they get the API or they get the access, and then they can actually go compete. And if the EHR has a competing solution, then it's co-opetition. I expect this year bubbling back up now that we see HTI-5 as it gets cemented, and there's some like wiggle room on the nuances of what they'll change. But
Hmm.
certainly with between that and the FAQ they put out last month, they're signaling, hey, this is for real, not just court
Yeah.
cases. We are for real. I expect to see EHR vendors release more APIs. I expect to see them set guardrails around RPA, right? Robotic process automation, that is an alternative integrated path that the ASTP has blessed in this rule. They've said AI and RPA, that's a pattern of EHI exchange and access. And so in lieu of something else, you better be facilitating it. And so
Right.
you better believe that they're going to start facilitating it in a way that they can control and monetize to at least get back some reasonable amount for their intellectual property and costs.
And to protect their customers, like if you start to realize like, oh, I'm not allowed to tell another software system to not log into my EHR and start doing tasks, then pretty quickly you're like, well, let's make sure it has user access and audit logs.
I think what you'll see, like, I mean, we want to help EHRs with this. So if EHRs are interested to partner with a consultancy, to come forth, go forth and prosper. We're going to help you. But you could imagine in the login experience when it's you and I, it's like, all right, here's Brendan Keeler, here's my credentials. And then there's just like a toggle that says, is this Brendan Keeler? Is this Brendan Keeler's delegated bot?
Mm,
You could start to track that usage independently
mm,
about who is it attributed to, and monetize it potentially differently
yeah,
in terms of getting back costs associated. But there's artful ways that are totally unexplored territory that we're going to see mature very rapidly over the course of this year because of the pressures of information blocking made real by HTI-5.
love it. I love that you're like, it's real, because in a way, it's like it's been real since the Cures Act, right? But like not, we should have made
I mean,
T-shirts
we should have
before
said.
it would.
Lisa Bari and Kat McDavitt have the whole, Tefka's not real, so like we'd be a little too close if we
I
said.
love that joke.
Yeah. But here's the thing is, like, it has been real, and I didn't believe it. Right, like you go back and read the stuff I put on the Substack in 2021 about like what is the Cures Act, what is information blocking. These
Doesn't
exceptions
have
feel
teeth.
huge.
Yeah.
With point click care, you and I and others were like, oh yeah, now it's real. But still, people are like, well, that's a court case. Maybe the ASTP will think differently. No longer, no longer. It's
No.
very clear that the ASTP is like, yep, that case, we agree with what they're saying. It's going to incentivize a different set of behavior. It's going to change the equilibrium in a way that if resisted, there's no better way to be swept aside as a relic, as a
Mm,
legacy vendor. But if you
mm-hmm.
lean in, if these vendors lean in, there's opportunity in these hills. There's opportunity
Yeah.
in every change.
Opportunity, maybe not at the profit center, but at least to like guide the way that your system is going to start getting used by competitors or partners or whomever. If you write the rules and you write them well and they're conforming to regulation, then all of a sudden, at least we have policy locally that sort of protects us from how we do those
Yeah.
things. So, all right, well, HTI-5, anything else you want to talk about there?
Well, comment
Oh,
period.
yeah.
We're in it. We're in it. And so make your voice heard. Whoever's listening, make sure to comment. It's not hard to comment. We will link in the show notes a prior little guide I did, but like you go on, it could literally be just like typing 2 sentences in the comment, attribute to yourself. You could be, if you're a little bit more polished, if it's for your org, you write a little PDF doc. Say your lived experience, what you believe to be true in relation to the changes to criteria. There's only 4 thus far that have been submitted as comments. I will continue to live tweet them and analyze them, but they're thus far not that interesting.
Mm.
Um, the good ones are yet to come. It's always a spike towards the end. I think it's
Mm.
like mid-February. Yeah, end of February is the end of the 60-day comment period. We'll finalize that. It'll take some time for them to parse all those comments. They do read them all. They'll finalize it in the spring or likely the summer. It's not summer or fall, unless they're operating at warp speed. And then we'll see what's coming next is HTI-6. And that will be, if the rumors are true, all the 6.
Yeah, 6. That's next.
And so it'll be the API criteria. So, EHRs are getting a little bone, but it's going to
Yeah.
be, I think, changed for them in that there'll be API criteria. We're going to re-criteria as bulk, slim, bulk, slim. This is the slim phase. We're bulking
Mm-hmm.
back up with
Okay.
APIs. So
Like
FHIR
intermittent
subscriptions.
fasting for
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And
healthcare
so
regulation.
CDS hooks, FHIR subscriptions. What do you want to see in it? What's missing in? What would you love to see in the world?
FHIR subscriptions is so fascinating to me. It's just like a very memorable moment in my career. Yeah, somebody was teaching about FHIR subscriptions at FHIR Dev Days, and I was like, "Why do we still have HL7? Like, what the heck is going on?" And a mentor of mine, Nick McKenzie, love you, Nick, if you're out there, was like, "Nobody's going to build this until it's regulated." So it's kind of crazy. Now I'm like, "Oh, regulation might be coming." It is going to be very interesting to see how that stuff gets implemented. I'm curious to see the nuances of the rules because that's a very new concept, being able to dynamically subscribe to event notifications. If you're super familiar with
Maybe
HL.
if someone doesn't know what they are, maybe explain what they are.
So FHIR at the moment is this huge standard of how you should exchange healthcare data. And there's actually lots of written rules about here's how FHIR does XYZ that's completely unused in the real world. It's like purely academic and like people who are thinking about how healthcare data should be exchanged are writing these implementation guides or profiles or whatever, but like nobody uses them. And so subscriptions is one of the examples where like pretty much every FHIR server nowadays or FHIR facade is query based. Like if you want information, come and ask for it, which makes it really hard to say, tell me when I should start caring about Brendan because you can't just poll someone's EHR server every day for so event based notifications are still largely HL7B2. Like this person was admitted, so I'm going to proactively push out a notification to all the systems that care about my registration information or my admission information. We're going to push you an order, and you're going to push me back a lab result, et cetera. And the idea of FHIR subscriptions is, okay, well, the FHIR server could also have this pub sub sort of architecture where if someone tells me that they want to hear about these event notifications, I don't necessarily have to push them a pipe delimited text file over MLLP using a VPN as the authentication method. Maybe I should just like use OAuth and the internet, like HTTPS. The rest is internet too. So FHIR subscriptions would be crazy because it's sort of the first time that we've, as an industry, would be saying, hey, EHRs, you need to develop a manner to push like JSON FHIR payloads to other systems so that they hear about events in basically virtual real time, near real time, and you can dynamically register and subscribe to these things. And so instead of having like a little construction crew get together and build this HL7 feed, going to be a little bit more like the modern internet. And a lot of EHRs are probably like, shoot, that's going to make it easier for other people to get the information that's valuable to our system. And
Yeah, people see HRs and they're like, oh yeah, they must be these like evil villains like up in the layer or something. That's not it. They're just like, well, we built something that kind of does that. Can you go use that? Because we got to go build something for our providers over here. Like
right,
they are product managers, and so like when there are underserved needs, a lot of times they'll be like, oh yeah, let's go do CDS hooks. We don't have anything like that. But if when it's like replacing, you see this resistance because they're saying, what's missing here? From my vantage point, and I think you'll agree with me, someone can convey an event, right? Can say, here's a new order, here's an admission, but it is not the developer experience that is expected right? Times have changed. And now I expect documentation I can go and test and play with. I expect JSON and not pipe delimits. That's an arbitrary thing that will probably grow out of it because we've grown out of EDI and pipe delimitation into XML, and then we grow out of XML and brackets into curly braces, and like maybe language first interoperability is next. Our little favorite tongue du jour changes, but doesn't mean that's not what's popular right now. And so the
Yeah.
expectations are a format, but also an experience. And by virtue of having to make this new thing, an experience comes with it that is more beneficial for creating alongside EHRs. And so that is the raison d'etre, like to
Yeah.
do some French here.
Which, yeah, golly. I thought I was working with the French companies, but you've been just rattling it off. You were saying, why have these things not been developed yet? The answer is customer of an electronic health record sometimes is like, hey, electronic health record of whom I am a customer. Will you help me integrate our systems? But most of the time, the people that are mad about how an EHR does or does not integrate aren't even the customer of the EHR. So why would the EHR go develop new things? Why would they spend money and capital and calories on developing these new things for other people to be able to join their ecosystem and potentially compete with them, but more importantly, just like not really pay them? It's like a profit. It's not a profit center for these EHRs to be like, hey, let me figure out how my system, which I spent 40 years developing, can talk to every other system in the world. That's not a priority most of the time. And so when it's regulation and when the customers ask for it, it becomes a priority. They're not evil. I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, they're just doing what every system of record business does it. Everyone operates this way. People think
Yeah.
that healthcare is uniquely has a bunch of evil masterminds. That's not it. It's like your system of record. I could spend money building the APIs, or I could go build the next module to serve the needs directly
Yeah.
in a way that I can actually control the
Yeah.
experience of. In that trade-off, most product managers are like, I'm going to do that thing, unless they're particularly API minded or open minded or using openness as a differentiator.
Mm.
That's changed now
Which
with
happens.
information
Yeah.
blocking. And you know what? It allows new AI forward solutions that sell to healthcare systems to enter the scene. And so
Segue.
what's happened this week, Pryce?
So, man, everyone is in a tizzy, at least on my LinkedIn, about ChatGPT having released ChatGPT Health. I mean, that's the thing that I've just got in on the wait list for. But there are several things being released by OpenAI right now that have to do with healthcare. We've seen it coming for a while. At least you have. People who read between the lines have seen it coming for a while. Generally don't care until things happen. It's probably just my ADHD. But tell me, what did OpenAI release in the past week? And then we'll start digging into that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not reading between the lines. They signed a pledge that they were going to do this in
Well,
July.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like,
a pledge, which at the time I was like, a pledge means nothing. And nobody is on the hook to do these things. And all those companies that had signed the pledge, I was thinking, I bet it looks really good for your CEO to be shaking hands with RFK right now. But you were right. They're doing things. A lot of these companies are doing things, and one of them was OpenAI. So tell me what they released.
they had a big week. ChatGPT Health, which is ChatGPT, the chat interface for consumers, patients, to interact with health data. It is very akin to a personal health record, the PHR. It is that, right? They are housing the information. You can do a nifty thing with it. You can interact in an AI native way with it, but it's the personal health record that that Microsoft Health Vault, that Google,
Or what is it called? Apple Health?
Apple Health Record. The first, anytime someone enters health, what if you could own your data? Like, it's the most popular idea. I think Out of Pocket called it a tar pit, right? And it is because as a standalone idea, it's not a good vehicle to gain distribution. Historically, the access methods were really friction filled, but now we're in an era where that's changing, where the fifth iteration of patient access, the fifth generation, is pretty good. And so we see them embed via an aggregator. They didn't spend a ton of calories going doing healthcare specific work. They spent the calories to integrate with someone who's done the hard work, be well, as an on-ramp to nationwide networks like Tefka, as a aggregator of patient access APIs, generation 4 patient access APIs. Tefka IAS is generation 5.
Tefka Strikes Back.
Yeah, Tefka strikes back. they've embedded it. So the other things in this announcement, the other apps, they developed up to the app framework, the app SDK that OpenAI makes available, similar to like Expedia or Booking.com. That's out there. Both you and I got access to it. How's it been?
Patient access APIs. I just want to really simplify that for everyone. I can download ChatGPT on my phone, which I have done. I don't really, I don't really like the LLMs, but they're really useful. I just don't like the fact that the rich are getting richer. That's what I don't like about them. But super useful, especially if you take everything you hear from ChatGPT with a grain of salt, like you would a Google search or whatever. But it doesn't have your healthcare data until it partners with, in this case, BeWell, which we love. And BeWell is basically like Plaid in a way that they say, okay, well, you have the rights to your healthcare data. BeWell doesn't, ChatGPT doesn't. But if ChatGPT partners with BeWell, who's already gone and fetched every your 90% of the country's health systems patient access APIs, endpoints, which is to say, like, hit this endpoint, tell me who you are, and then I will verify if I think you are who you're saying you are. And then if you are indeed who you're saying you are and I have your chart, I will give it back to BeWell. BeWell will give it to ChatGPT, right? So that's what's happening is healthcare data is federated. Patients are becoming more and more powerful and being able to access that healthcare data in the same way that we do with Plaid. But people are freaking out, I think sort of rightfully so. There's two main themes that I'm seeing, and I want to talk through these. One of them is everyone's like, can't believe this isn't regulated. ChatGPT is going to kill a ton of people who upload their charts and listen to ChatGPT for healthcare advice. And my response to that is like, we need to teach people to think critically. It is good for me to be able to ask my friends about like why my knee hurts. And it's good for me to be able to ask Google. And now it's good for me to be able to ask ChatGPT. But if the first response is like your knee hurts, you're probably dying of a heart attack, I should take that with a grain of salt, like I would when I talk to anyone. And then if the next step is diagnosis or treatment, I should talk to a doctor. So I kind of don't feel like people need to freak out about ChatGPT giving healthcare advice because nobody should treat it like a doctor. What's your take on that?
Look, the balance of it is where there's potential harm. People can think in two ways, right? One is paternalism. Like, let's stop it because then we'll stop any potential harm, but that they miss the trade-offs of the potential good.
Exactly.
The other is sort of like a market-oriented approach of if this is not a substandard tool, then people will stop using it very rapidly. And there will be also the optics, this is a big company. If they mess up, it is pretty catastrophic to their ambitions here. The idea that they're kind of fast shooters from the hip, like I don't see that. Like everyone assumes Amazon or Google or OpenAI are like gunslingers. No, like those are the startups. Startups are the gunslingers because they don't have the same pressures of like the information and the verge like
Mhm.
up their bums about every single little update. Like the scrutiny on big tech is immense. The like OpenAI, for better or worse, is like now in the big tech leagues. Like they're not startup, little scrappy startup. Like that scrutiny, as well as the processes of like enterprise big tech, mean that you go through a lot of checks and balances to ship these sorts of products. I agree. Like, look, if you want to stop the harm, you could cut it off. That's one. But two, it underestimates that most transformative change comes from something that underperforms an existing incumbent. If you
Hmm.
imagine AI in that paradigm, like it's going to start by underperforming, but will rapidly overperform at a cost benefit that is
Mhm.
dramatic. And
Mhm.
so all this to say is like the HIPAA right access means patients can get access to their data and upload it anyway. The intentionality of a separate sandbox, like a separate
Yeah.
data area for health, of a model trained for it, of guidance in there, like actual product management thought towards this versus people just uploading to the raw like regular chat GPT. That's a good iteration that we should
Yes.
be,
Yes.
like
I
happy
agree.
about.
I'm like, you can decide how you want to care for yourself, but people were already using the internet and they were already using LLMs. So now it's a little bit more official, and hopefully the LLMs understand the shape of the data that they're seeing a lot better, and maybe the security is better and things like that. But speaking of security, that's the second thing that I feel like everyone's in a tizzy about is that they're like, you think I'm going to hand my data over to Sam Altman? And first of all, yeah, Sam Altman is definitely reading your vitals. He's reading through every single one of your vitals. Okay, like if you give your healthcare data to OpenAI, I think Sam Altman is personally sitting at his computer, probably making fun of you for all of the conditions on your problem list. No, that's not happening, right? Like, but what is happening is OpenAI is gathering a lot of healthcare information from people who are willingly giving it to them. And then they're keeping it secure, I'm sure, because they're a huge tech company and they have a privacy policy that that they're probably legally obliged to follow, but they're not regulated by HIPAA. And and I'm not freaked out by that because I understand the implications. But my expectation is also that they would, for every bit of data that they gather, like why would they not de-identify it and use it in some, you know, way that's beneficial to them commercially, selling it.
Well, they said they're not. They said they're not going to use it for model training.
They did?
But
Well, not
yeah, they did
model
say.
training. But why would they not? Why would they not say, I have a million charts that I can de-identify. Do I want to sell them to Optum Life Sciences? Is that not something that they could do?
There's two things here.
Uh-huh.
One is de-identified data sales, right?
Yeah.
Is one angle, and the other is identified data sales. De-identified data sales, your provider sells your charts.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
like the
People are that's
naivete of people thinking that it's like, oh, if we don't give it to OpenAI, like they'll sell my charts. It's like your provider is selling your charts, your EHR is selling your charts. If you have a problem with that, we need to go back to the legislative drawing board and change HIPAA, which allows for the sale of de-identified data. So even with HIPAA, de-identified data is a process, and certainly you could imagine them monetizing this way. I think more broadly, what I saw missing from the announcement, and like I haven't gone spelunking through the privacy policy in terms of service, is like, how are they monetizing? This is something that could drive new subscriptions. Great, sure. But are they selling this in an identified fashion to parties? Like that's scary to people. And
yeah.
they could be a lot crisper about what they are going to do here in a way
Yeah.
that, like every Reddit comment was like, healthcare insurers would love to get their hands on this. As a consumer company, you need to go way beyond in terms of saying what you're going to do here. But I imagine they don't know yet. They don't fully know. They're paying BUL something. They're not paying as much as TEFCA IAS would cost. That there's a significant cost there in terms of the credential service provider costs are pretty high. And so that would trickle down into fees to OpenAI. And so people just rightfully are like, okay, how are they going to monetize this? And it scares them. We can kind of poke at the Redditors, but like I think there's something realer than the other considerations to parse out there for OpenAI to be just like over communicate intentionality here.
I love what you're saying in the sense that like if you're surprised that this commercial company that's giving you free or cheap access to almost infinite knowledge is going to try to make money off of you using it. If that surprises you, then you should reconsider how you interact with the economy. How they do it, I think they need to outline clearly. Like just as an example, you're talking about it as a PHR, and I'm kind of like, is it a PHR? I don't know. So far, the interface that I've used, it had access to my data. Where is it storing it? What does it look like? And I know for a fact that the data was just garbage. I don't know if that was the EHR that responded that had garbage data. I don't know if it was the query that was bad. I don't know if ChatGPT got it and then did something wrong with it, but the data was bad. And all that to say, does OpenAI have like a Firestore for this information or some sort of database that they've created? Or is it, I don't know, does BeWell persist data? And OpenAI is just sort of in a business relationship with them where they are using that like clinical data repository for individuals. I didn't even get that far with regards to the architecture.
Well, I
So
think from an architecture, all we know, they didn't give deep architectural nuance of like how
it's like they gave
BWell's like.
nothing.
Well, they said it's separate. They said it's a separate data partition within ChatGPT, so it's not commingled with the
Okay.
broader part. So it's like it is separate. I think to your point, 2 points. One is they intentionally did not make a standalone personal health record. It is just a knob away from a user interface perspective in ChatGPT. That is incredibly smart. That is using the distribution advantages they have to have it as a feature, is
Hmm.
embedded health versus a personal health record. Embedded health, embedding these capabilities, Be Well, patient access aggregation, TEFCA IAS, into existing experiences that do jobs to be done for consumer patients is the right way to approach this thing. It's what I wrote about in Indiana Jones and the PHR back in the day. Is like
Mm.
the failure of PHR is like to imagine that I can aggregate all my data is actually that interesting to most people. It's interesting to sick people and then like Whoop junkies.
And dozens, at least dozens of health tech nerds will also find it interesting. There are dozens of
I
us.
mean, I try every single one. So I've tried all the apps in ChatGPT, the general purpose ones, and they all break and they all are wrong and they don't work. And I was like, God, don't let that happen here. And I will say that they spent calories to make it work a little bit better. The linking experience and provider search is quite nice. But to your point, the clinical data stuff's not working for me for my dermatologist on ECW, for my Epic site.
Yeah.
They got to resolve that because that's going to really, really undermine the whole thing. If the coverage that's surfaced there, which is the leading coverage that BWell has, if it's undermined by it not working, and then people are like, oh,
Yeah.
all right, see ya. And they won't trust it.
When I was young and impressionable at Epic, I actually love that one, whatever the first commandment is, the commandment of Epic is like software must work. And at the time I was like, what the hell? Like, what kind of rule is that? Right. And now I'm 10 years in, I kind of understand the industry and monetization and I'll use something and it doesn't work. And I'm like, damn it, just like get rid of it. I'll never use it again. And so I do kind of feel bad for OpenAI. I feel bad in the sense that like this is a good product to launch, but like what if just low adoption of nationwide networks like TEFCA and Care Quality or poor implementation by random electronic health records is creating the sense that like they've released this terrible product. And that was my experience so far is that like I didn't get real healthcare data in there. Not that I had burning questions to ask it. That's my take on that front.
Yeah, I mean, at least we're in the beta or the pilot or whatever, right? We got in the wait list, and hopefully they haven't rolled it
Oh
out
yeah,
fully so they can
that's true.
resolve some of these issues before it gets more widespread. But
Yep.
we're coming up on time here, and so we won't even get to the other announcements from OpenAI, which were ChatGPT for healthcare. So ChatGPT is a interface for providers competing with sort of UpToDate as a main
Yeah.
competitor, and then OpenAI for healthcare, which is just them saying, hey, our APIs, those are HIPAA compliant.
Interesting.
Both these products are less interesting. They're interesting because they're pushing in, but they're doing what traditionally horizontal tech companies always do, which is put up the shingle and say, "Yep, we're HIPAA compliant with SSO." There's the features that aren't actually all that HIPAA's healthcare specific, but more security flows elsewhere. SSO is not healthcare specific. These features are all like reusable
Yeah.
value add, where horizontal tech companies struggle is to actually do the non-reusable stuff, like do the HL7v2 or maintain certain compliance rules. Always there's this tension
Yeah.
as a horizontal company that they struggle to resolve.
That's why we see like many iterations of failures coming from Apple, Google, Microsoft in dethroning an electronic health record or creating a PHR that's meaningful for people.
They've got good leadership, right? Nate Gross from Doximity, but those and someone else from Instagram are the two of the leaders of the healthcare unit. But they're pretty consumer focused. So I just do they have the wherewithal specifically for ChatGPT for providers to like do the things? I'm excited to see the next set of announcements of they're using Redux. They've done some HL7. They're starting to actually do a workflow that shows some true investment into the
Right.
particularities of the
Right.
vertical versus the things that look like they're vertical specific that are actually just reusable across all industries.
You said like you feel like this is maybe competing with UpToDate. Is it not competing with open evidence as well? Like it's the same kind of concept.
Same job to be done, different go-to-market motions, right?
Uh,
I cannot go pick up
uh,
ChatGPT for providers or ChatGPT for healthcare, right? Like I have to go sign the BAA. It's an
okay.
enterprise go-to-market motion,
Okay.
which puts them more into the realm of UpToDate to start until they
Okay.
change that.
That makes sense. I was actually with my psychiatrist this morning and talking about Doximity, and she wanted all the tea, and I was giving it to her, which is why I'm so antsy and excited right now.
We'll have to go back to that, revisit that. Well, we expect to see some updates on that court case coming up. But Pryce, have a
Love it.
great Friday. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for hanging out. See y'all.